I filmed the intro to this laptop already, and I realized I didn't like the intro to this laptop here. I've been using it for 2 days. This is the brand new Lenovo 7i Slim Aura Edition with the brand new Lunar Lake chip from Intel. I did like a generic intro to this video here, and I was like, there's a laptop, and I didn't want to do that this time. I also didn't want to rush this video. This laptop is something else. This is something special. Why is this laptop something special? This laptop has a brand new chip from Intel that finally, Intel did it right. It's taken them forever. You watch my videos, you see that I daily drive Intel sometimes, I go AMD sometimes, but I'm always very critical of Intel. Not because I don't like Intel, not because I'm biased, but because I want them to do better. They finally did it. This chip here is outstanding. This laptop review here is not going to be a focus on the chip itself. I'm going to have a follow-up video talking about the chip itself, AMD stuff. I'm also going to have a follow-up just like the gaming on this chip itself, so stay tuned for that. This is a review of this laptop here, which happens to have the new Lunar Lake stuff in it. This laptop is shockingly good, shockingly good. It wasn't super expensive. It's not a cheap laptop, but it wasn't super expensive. And Lenovo has, I don't know what they did here, but they took the Intel chip, the brand new Lunar Lake chip, and they built a package around that matches it. It's just outstanding. This laptop is freaking outstanding. So we'll jump into the review here. This is going to be a review of the laptop itself, which I will, of course, draw in some of the Lunar Lake stuff here. I'm not going to do a lot of bar charts. That's not my style, because comparing, oh, look at this, the Lunar Lake chip here does 20% more battery than AMD, but it's not the same freaking laptop. So I'm not going to do that. Right? I will give you some subjective commentary on how I think this chip is, how I think the battery life is, but I can't compare two totally different laptops and then talk about the chips inside. That doesn't make sense. That's bad science. So what I will do is I'll compare the laptop itself, maybe to another laptop, and then as we bring in more and more and more and more laptops as they come along with this chip in it, hopefully this literal laptop with a Ryzen AI chip, because then I can do a real comparison scientifically, control as many variables as you can, and then compare them. Then I can give you a breakdown of how these chips perform. But I've been seeing a lot of comparisons out there online right now, on YouTube as well, where they're talking about these chips, but they're not even in the same laptop. They're not even the same platform. How are you going to compare battery life of the chips? So let's jump into this laptop review here. I'm not going to make any broad sweeping statements about Lunar Lake here being the best or the worst thing ever in the world. But what I will do is give you an idea of how this specific Aura Edition laptop is worth buying. And obviously, spoilers, this thing is outstanding and I'm going to use it as a daily driver and you should probably buy it. But let's show you why I came to that conclusion. Okay, so here's the laptop. I didn't want to, do my standard unboxing and that on film. This is something very special, being a brand new chip and a brand new platform. So I wanted to spend a couple days with it. So it's been a couple days. This laptop here is obviously very premium. Metal top, metal bottom, metal interior, typical of the Lenovo Yoga. That's their new Yoga series. That's how they look. That's how they feel. They have other metal styles that are quite similar. The IdeaPad Pros, at least, look like this. This is a slim Yoga. There's also the Yoga Pros, which are also similar to this, usually a little bit thicker. There's the ThinkBooks now that are also metal, but they're also quite a bit thicker and they don't have the rounded edges. You can see that there. That's typical of a Yoga. They're a little bit rounded. Yoga used to mean 2-in-1s, like flip over. Now they just call them 2-in-1, and Yoga is basically, I don't know, their new series. There's also the Slim Pro, which is kind of the same, but a little bit of a different lid here to some of the other ones, but again, all metal. Big intake there, 2 speakers there. There's also speakers on the inside, you'll see that. But it's a very sleek looking package. In the hand, it's very premium. All metal, there's zero flex on it, obviously. It's a big metal laptop. It is 15 inches, so that, potentially there could be a little bit on some laptops. It's not super thick metal, but this one has none. Doesn't feel unwieldy. 1,500 grams. So what's that, 3.4 pounds, somewhere around there. Relatively light for a 15-inch laptop. Again, it's pretty thin. Yeah, looking pretty nice there. Look at the ports here. HDMI on the left, Thunderbolt 1, Thunderbolt there 4 on the left, headphone microphone combo jack. Right side, your other Thunderbolt 4, and a USB-A. So pretty good ports considering it's such a thin little laptop. Camera kill switch there. Pretty good ports considering it's such a thin little laptop, but I mean, there could be more theoretically. Inside, and then we'll open up the laptop. Okay, glossy screen. We'll get into the screen later, but you can see it's very glossy. Bump out there for the camera, sensor there as well. Very nice. Speakers firing up as well. This thing has incredible sound. You'll hear when we get there as well, but there's a lot of speakerage here. Big trackpad and your typical Lenovo IdeaPad / yoga / ThinkBook keyboard nowadays. Right, very nice, very premium. So let's look at the inside of the laptop, and we're going to talk about some different things inside. That's the only part of this laptop that I haven't done, is I haven't went inside the laptop. So this is the only live part in terms of like, I don't know what we're going to get out of it, but we'll still do the rest of the review my typical way where we explore things together, because I want to show you guys how cool this laptop is. Just so you know, when you open it, you need these star style. It doesn't use a Phillips or anything like that. Yogas and ThinkBooks use this star style nowadays. They have for a very long time, so just be aware of that. Typically, you can go like here and separate that if need be, if you really can't get in. But typically what I do is I just give it a tiny bit of torque and try to get into one of these corners here. Something like that. It's a little bit of a resistance there. Okay, and it's all metal, so once you kind of get the first part, then you can basically just slide it around. I don't like to pull on these because they are metal, but they're relatively thin metal. So I'm always worried about breaking them. So I typically, do this style here. Carbon neutral certified, whatever that means. Metal, right? Basic thin metal, but it's got some structural stuff. It feels nice and rugged, so it's fine. And there's a look inside the laptop itself. Now I'm going to talk about a few different things here. You'll notice here there's no SOTA memory. It's not, you can't upgrade the memory. It's also not soldered to the motherboard. What do I mean by that? These Lunar Lake chips, which are actually under here, if I can find that thing. There's a Lunar Lake chip under there, right? The new Intel chip. The memory's on board, right? So it's not in the CPU, but it's in this package, the CPU package. So the memory's actually inside of that. It runs very, very fast, but it's not upgradable. And the interesting thing is with these Lenovos, if you get into, the interesting things with these here, these Intel chips, and in this Lenovo, for example, when you get into the, base model, 16 gigabytes, it's in the chip. So you get one CPU. Then when you increase to 32 gigabytes, you actually also increase the chip, the CPU. So you get a higher CPU, which also comes with 32 gigabytes of RAM. That's because it's all integrated in one. So there's no ability to upgrade this. First set of speakers firing down. Spoiler, they sound truly shockingly incredible. I mean, these large styles are usually like that. And then the up firing is kind of like on the back of this. I don't want to take that off too much, but let's actually do it because this is a video and I am trying to show you guys things. So I will actually take the speaker right off. That's magnetized. Okay, speaker 1, speaker 2. It's just got a little rubber gaskety thing. I don't want to break it. This is going to probably be a laptop that I use for a while. Speaker 1 firing up into the person. Speaker 2 firing down. So you get quad speakers, 2 speakers built into each module of a sort, like a speaker module, but they do fire down with the big boys coming at the bottom of the table or whatever to give you some of that reverb, some of that thump. This thing does have thump. And then you also get the up firing speakers. What else is interesting inside of here? There's a little bit of dead zone. You can see that there, a little bit of dead zone. They did, move these speaker things around here. So what I would have liked to have seen is actually get rid of that, cut that off. That's gone. Shift this battery down. And then the reason I'm saying that is because this is a pretty big battery, 70 watt hours, especially with this Intel. It's going to run for a long time. 2 things to improve this on this laptop, 2 ways to improve it. Cut that off because that doesn't serve any purpose. So these go. And then the speakers just come down and fasten in there. Then you have this big zone here because you can see that's an empty zone. This is an empty zone. You could either make the battery bigger, turn it into an 80 watt hour, so the battery would fill that whole thing. Or what I would like to see is actually shift that down, right? Because we only have one single storage on this laptop, single NVMe. The Wi-Fi is not upgradable. I don't find it to be the biggest issue in the world, but some people that does bother them, but it's there. But I would really like to see a second NVMe. Because if you shift this down, you could increase more motherboard and you could just have an NVMe 1, NVMe 2, 0 issues. I don't understand why Lenovo didn't do that. What I really don't understand is why they put in a 2242. That's dumb. I don't want to have a 2242 inside of my laptop. Let's take out the battery just for a second. Yeah, just to be safe. Yeah, that's dumb. It's just a dumb thing, Lenovo. Don't do that. Don't do that. Stop doing dumb things. So we'll take this off here. Just like a hard plasticky thing. Okay, so 2242, look at what this is later in performance and that. But yeah, I don't want only a 2242 inside my very premium, super nice laptop that I want to use forever, because this is a laptop that appeals towards creative types, professionals, people who are going to be, potentially needing more data, like 4 terabytes. So let's see if we can sneak one of these in here. There's a thing there. You might be able to take that out in theory. I don't know. This is a 4 terabyte, but it's single-sided. So it can also fill in for a 2 terabyte. Yeah, you could get it in there. It's going to be resting on the battery terminal, and it's going to be resting on this little connector here that's basically going for the trackpad and that, and probably the keyboard. But it would sit in there. It'll be fine, but just be aware that's not like to Lenovo standard. It's basically just going to sit there. You may want to put a little thermal pad on it just to keep it pressed down. And I mean, it's not going to get hot. This will basically, all the heat from this will go right into this giant heat sink here. So that's not a problem by any means. So that's a single-sided, that'll work. This is a dual-sided 4 terabyte. I don't think it's going to work because the chips are at the bottom. See that there? So this is a Kioxia drive. If I put that in there, I mean, maybe it's going to be freaking snug though. I wouldn't do that. I mean, let's see. Let's try it. Let's try it for science. I mean, it works. I don't actually feel the NVMe, which is interesting. Right? That was the battery up to about here. The NVMe was right about here. I actually don't feel it. Maybe, yeah, the only place I actually feel pressure on the whole thing, like that's all dead zone in there. Right? This is all dead zone. The only place I feel anything pressing is right here. That's the only place I can feel pressure. Nothing else. So let's see what's underneath there. If that's where the NVMe is. I don't remember exactly how far up it was. If that is the case, I mean, you could leave it in here, but you are going to be sitting this thing on, if it's on your lap, it's going to be sitting on the freaking NVMe. It won't matter if the feet are in, because obviously it's going to be sitting on the feet. But just be aware of that. So let's take that off. That was right there. Yeah, it is basically. Yeah, so it is going to be touching the NVMe. If you put in a dual-sided, let's try this here, single-sided, which will go down a little bit further. Yeah, that's definitely sitting down lower. Yeah, so with that there, that's a lot better, right? I can't really feel it there, the pressure that was there. So a single-sided is good to go for sure. That's fine. You are limited to either a 2242. If you want to go 2280, has to be single-sided, either 2 terabyte or 4 terabyte, whatever. So I could put this in here. It's not the best drive, but it's fine. Realistically, it would be fine. So if I do decide to daily drive this, for me, probably actually I would stick in that drive there. The idea of having this here and then having it press on the chips, it is a little worrying. So I probably wouldn't do that personally myself. But that's the limitation of this laptop here. You'll see, I will talk about that negatively when we get into the conclusions and that, but let's talk about it now. That's dumb, Lenovo. Just don't do that. Okay, just don't do that. Like, give us a 2280. Don't artificially limit our ability to use a product effectively. Like, just don't do that. Give us a 2280 at minimum so that we can upgrade it ourselves. I mean, ideally, you would actually, put that in there, give us a 2280 and have a second slot by moving that down. But I would like to at least give us one 2280. Don't give us a laptop that's 15 inches in size with 12242. That's just dumb. Other than that, though, I mean, looks pretty good. The heat is not going to be too much of an issue. We have a big fan on the left there, a little bit of a smaller fan on the right there. I mean, this thing's not going to run hot regardless, but that's just something to be aware of. That's the one limitation of this laptop. Otherwise, it's fantastic inside for what it is. I mean, soldered, that kind of sucks. The chip itself just can't have upgraded memory. It just doesn't exist. But I would like to see some tweaks here and there. I'd like to see these chopped off, that moved down, either give us a bigger battery or, more importantly, give us a slightly bigger motherboard with the second chip there. Maybe this one is a 2280, and then you have a smaller one down there. Now, the keyboard and the trackpad are really outstanding on this. It's the same keyboard that you get on, I guess, like the ThinkBook 14 Plus that I reviewed, some other Yoga. Sometimes they use a shiny texture, like a shiny plastic on it. This one here has this kind of rubbery texture that you get on, I guess, Microsoft Surface would be the closest that you'd get this on. Yeah, it's just really, really nice. Standard layout. You do get the dumb little Copilot thing, but otherwise it's quite nice. Right? Typical Lenovo style where you have your functions and volume up and then volume down, or you can function that and then they're going to function as function keys. Your pick. Really, really nice. We'll give it a quick type here. Great travel on it as well. I don't know if you can see that, but really, really, really nice travel on that keyboard there. All right, so even though they're slightly smaller keycaps, they're not super thin, but they're also not super tall, but you do get a lot of travel. It's very snappy. So realistically, it's 10 out of 10 keyboard, I guess I'd say. I mean, there's ways you could make it better, but not realistically. Trackpad here you can see, nice and big. It could only really be bigger if they put it, I guess, to the edge of the laptop, which I wouldn't like. Very, very smooth. Right, nice click too. There's a few trackpads from Lenovo that I prefer over this, but this is still very, very nice. Realistically, it's 10 out of 10 keyboard, I guess I'd say. I mean, there's ways you could make it better, but not realistically. It would just come down to preference. But overall, it's just really an outstanding keyboard and quite a nice trackpad as well. There's a couple trackpads I prefer from Lenovo, but again, very, very nice. Now, this is a very nice screen on this laptop. It's a glossy screen, IPS, but as a result of being an IPS screen with good colors and being glossy, it looks truly outstanding. This is the type of screen that would probably trade blows, honestly, with an OLED. In some cases, it would beat it. You can see here it's 1800p, so high resolution, 15 inches. It is nice to have something even above 1600p because you get a little bit more pixel density there. 120 hertz refresh rate here is also very nice. This screen here also does have 100% DCI-P color space. It's going to have great coverage of the color gamut there. And you can see just how vibrant it is. It looks even better in person, realistically, but it's truly a really, really nice screen. Now, it is an IPS, so it's not going to have absolutely complete blacks, 100% contrast ratio. But what happens here is when you have a glossy, high-quality IPS screen, you get really good blacks. So let's see that there. I mean, to my naked eye, I wouldn't be able to tell this apart from an OLED. If there was an OLED beside it, you can see there's a fingerprint there. If there's an OLED beside it, I would probably be able to tell, but this is such a nice IPS screen that it really has excellent contrast ratio. And what happens then is because it's a non-glossy, when you get non-glossy screens, typically you get a little bit of light diffusion and it actually makes the blacks look less black. It also happens on an OLED screen. A lot of the time when people look at an IPS screen versus an OLED screen, they say, oh my God, the OLED is so much better. It's amazing. I mean, a lot of the reason is because it's just 100% DCI-P and glossy. So, I mean, the colors are going to look no different on this versus an OLED. Realistically, they're going to be very, very similar. You're going to get really vibrant colors. They're going to look fantastic. The only real difference between an IPS and an OLED, when both of them are glossy and both of them have really good color space, the 100% DCI-P, is that the blacks will be a little bit better on an OLED. But these are really good blacks. You can see that there. So you can see right there, incredibly vibrant reds. It's also a very bright screen. My camera's freaking out because it's so bright. Oh my God, such a nice screen. It is such a nice screen. Look at that. Look how vibrant that is. This is what I would consider a 10 out of 10 IPS screen. I would take this over an OLED. Personally, I would take it over an OLED because you don't get any of the negatives. Burn-in risk, eye strain, flicker. You just get incredible colors. Honestly, really good blacks. I don't know if you can see that down there, but that's the black of the panel, the chin, and that's black. That's actually a bar right there. Can you tell the difference there between the black of the actual chin of the laptop up here as well? Right, that's black. There's no light coming out of that, and that's the actual screen below it. Look how close those are. Right, unless you had an OLED sitting on your lap and you were doing them right side by side, even then, I mean, right, you can barely see that that's actually screen there. And can you see that apart from the bezel? I can't. I'd have to get really close to be able to tell that apart. That's how good those blacks are. And look at how vibrant that screen is. Yep. It's a banger. Truly, it's a banger. And of course, it is a touchscreen if that's something you care about. It's for quick navigation. Normally, I don't care about touchscreens because I don't like to have fingerprints on them. But if you're not the person who's bothered by that, I mean, you can just really rapidly, navigate through menus and that just, I want to open that. So I've switched filming locations here down to my office, and you may kind of ask yourself, well, why did you do that? Well, I'm going to do an audio test, and this laptop is shockingly impressive. It gets very loud. So we'll come in here and we'll listen to this and see how it sounds. If you have headphones, you're going to want to watch them because this laptop gets real loud. Quad speakers, bottom, big thumpers, and the kind of mid-range tweeters up top. it gets loud. Now there are some also kind of sound profiles here. This is dynamic, which is what I was listening to most of the time. You can play with these and they actually do make a big difference. Let's throw it on to kind of like a middling. It's kind of too loud. So we'll go like 50 and then we'll go through these. You can kind of hear how different they are when we're actually playing with these different modes here. That brightens it up quite a bit. Music actually brings it down a bit, but enhances the bass a bit. Dynamic really brightens it up. Gaming sounds a little weird. And then you can do custom, of course, right? Yeah, for music does sound quite good. Probably dynamic is the best though. Or you can come into custom and you can just play with a little bit. Yeah, these modes actually do work. You can play with the ones that you want, but we'll just say that the speakers here are very impressive. I mean, you get big thumpers down here, which give it a lot of bass on the bottom of the laptop here. A lot of bass out of those. And then you get these up-firing tweeters here, so you get a nice kind of surround studio stereo kind of thing going on where you have, you know, the thumpers being separate of that. It allows these tweeters in the mid-range to be clear because a lot of the bass is coming out of here. So honestly, it's really good. It's very impressive speakers. Now I do want to do some testing here. We'll get the benchmarks after this, but I do want to show you guys how it sounds and the thermal on this chip here, because this is a brand new chassis from Lenovo. And it's also a brand new chip. You know, this is a brand new Lunar Lake. Again, I've already tested it, so I know what the results are going to be, but I want to show you guys just how impressive this thing is. So there's different modes here: performance, balanced, silent. We're going to go up to performance mode here, and we'll check some noise. We'll check some thermals here. This is not a Cinebench monster. It's not supposed to be a Cinebench monster. It's only an 8-core, 8-thread. But once we get into the video editing part, you'll see that that doesn't really matter that much. It still performs very well. But what I want to do here is just show thermals in that. So we'll jump into this here. So fairly quiet, 44. I was doing some heavy video editing on this for segments of the video, and this thing is pretty quiet, especially under video editing. I don't know, for some reason Cinebench is going to max this thing out, and it's going to produce a little bit more noise, but this thing is such a low-pitch fan too. It was sitting right on my lap. It was so much quieter than the other laptop I was using. Let's drop down here. See the wattages. They may not go down much, but yeah, we're down 5 watts there. Pretty quiet. Might be exaggerated on the mic, but very quiet. My noise floor is like 35 in my house, by the way. Silent. I can hear the fans, but it's almost so quiet that I can't hear them. The mic might exaggerate it, but I can barely hear them. Watts down to 20 or so. Throw that back up again. Yeah, and you can see that in performance mode, the watts, it can briefly boost up to like 40 or so, but realistically it's going to be at 30. So doing like some demanding tasks, it's just going to sit at 30, which is where this chip is rated to be efficient anyways. It doesn't need to go up to 40. It's actually 27. So when you're just hanging out doing like heavy workload, this is what you're going to be looking at here. 40 dB. It's pretty freaking quiet, realistically. Okay, now let's have a look at some benchmarks here. We can see... Okay, so now let's have a look at some benchmarks here. The first part here, we can see just Cinebench score, 10,000. That's not very impressive, realistically. I've seen significantly better on
comparable chips. The AMD 7840U, for example, brings in 2,000, 12,000, 13,000, even 14,000. However, that doesn't paint all of the picture here. So that's why sometimes, looking at these synthetic benchmarks doesn't really tell us much. So what I did is I loaded up some video editing here. This is 4K 60 video clips here. Looks like we're at about 12 minutes, 13 minutes of footage, 2 tracks, just to get a rough baseline here. And then I fired it up. So running through the video here, it looks like it took about 7 minutes and 43 seconds doing HEVC. So it's compressed more, so a little bit slower than normal, obviously, if you're just doing some generic one. And then what I did is I'd put the exact same clip on my 7840U laptop, which is comparable. It's comparable in terms of iGPU and comparable in terms of raw compute. Technically, in Cinebench, it gets around 3,000 more. And you can see here that on the 7840U, it took about 9 minutes and 33 seconds. So that's, we're looking at about 2 minutes more, which is more than 20%. 25% slower on the AMD 7840U. So despite the fact that it's 30% faster in Cinebench, that AMD chip, it's actually approximately 25 to 30% slower when you're actually doing video editing. So that's why looking at these synthetic benchmarks doesn't necessarily paint a picture. So then let's look at some battery life here. This is one of the places that really all of the reviewers and really everyone has been raving about Lunar Lake, and this is something that Intel was telling us, this thing's going to be crazy. 87% battery, 100% brightness, 120 hertz refresh rate. Nothing turned down. Didn't turn anything down here. This is just idle. We're just hanging out here. But we're looking at about 4.5 to 5 watts being burned. 13 hours at 87%, 14 hours, 15 hours probably if you're at, full battery. It's pretty impressive. Then I did some browsing. This is I'd consider this heavy browsing. I was just ripping around on the Lenovo website for a little while, multiple tabs. Realistically barely even reading the pages, just ripping around, probably at an abnormally fast rate to really push the CPU a little bit there. Average, you can see here, I did this for about 23 minutes, it looks like. Average 5.8 watts. This is where it's impressive. Normally when you're ripping around, especially on an Intel chip, going through browsing, going through things really fast, your watts start to go up real fast. Here we're looking at almost no change in wattages being burned, still around 5 to 6 watts. Meaning of actual browser, actual use, you're still looking at probably 15, 16, 17 hours battery life on this laptop. That is crazy. Then just my standard 1080p YouTube, something that can be standardized. 1080p YouTube, once again, 100% brightness, 120 hertz refresh rate, didn't throw anything down. Even loading this through, it looks like I did this for probably 6 or 7 minutes or so, basically just to make sure there was no buffering or anything like that. 6.5 minutes. So we're looking at probably 12 hours of YouTube. Remember, you can turn these things down. You could put it down to 60 hertz. You could probably turn the brightness down a bit because this is a super bright laptop and you're going to get even better battery life. So what people have been saying about this laptop in terms of battery is true. Incredibly impressive battery out of this Lunar Lake laptop here. And especially coming from previous Intel stuff that was never something that had good battery life. I always complained about it. This is shockingly good.
Okay, I'm not going to do a full gaming section in this review because I'm going to have a following up gaming video on this essentially. And in that video, I'm also going to talk about other iGPUs and compare them. But I'm going to do a little bit because it's still a laptop review of this laptop. So you can see here we're at 1200p. We have performance on, we'll put it down to balanced. And we're not on low, we're on medium. See what we can get here. Right. This is a very hard area, by the way. This is the last light in. Baldur's Gate 3, very difficult area to run. Very, very difficult. There are a couple more difficult areas, but this is pretty darn hard to run. You can see they're 40, balanced. On medium, of course, you can lower it. You could throw this down to, from balanced, turn it up. You could turn this down to low. I don't find that it's going to make a huge difference here. We can go like that. Put that maybe down to, quality, for example. There's lots of ways you can play around with this stuff. Same, right? A little bit higher technically, being on low with quality, and it looks basically the same when you're just on quality FSR. So we'll do some screenshots side by side here to basically just show how this compares to a 780M iGPU and potentially a 890M, the 890M that's in the basically the most powerful iGPU right now that comes in the Ryzen AI 370. So we can get a rough idea of how this iGPU performs, in various games. But I've spent, I don't know, I think I spent like 10 hours last night just testing games, game after game after game after game. That'll be in my iGPU video. But rest assured, suffice it to say, this thing can game, right? You're going to get performance that is around an ROG Ally, a Legion Go, GPD, the 780M graphics. You're going to get something around there. Sometimes a little bit faster, sometimes a little bit slower, but around there. And until a few weeks ago when the Ryzen AI with the 890M came out, there was no faster iGPU, realistically, than this right here. So very, very capable when it comes to gaming. But let's do a little side by side here just for this video here, get an idea of how it is. But stay tuned. You're going to see that I'm going to have a full gaming video on this iGPU, but rest assured, if you want a game on the Yoga Slim 7i or Edition, you absolutely can, and it's not going to be a compromised experience. It's going to be the same type of experience you get with some of the other best iGPUs out there on the market. So Intel has had a huge step up in terms of iGPU performance here and also just consistency. And I'd also like to point out we're only using 30 watts, 27 watts. So let's see how good this thing is when it appears in a handheld.
Let's just look at a couple more clips here. So this first one here is on the laptop here in Hogwarts Legacy. I want you to notice a couple things here. The frame rate obviously is good. Realistically for the setting here, we're looking at 1200p medium low mix, not even super low. And we have quality FSR on. And then what I want you to notice is just kind of how clear the image looks here. Very, very crisp, tons of detail. We're going to jump over here to the Ryzen AI 370 here. This is max watts, which is like 60, 65, so very high. Realistically, if you drop down to 30 watts, not a big difference. It kind of peaks at about 30 anyways. Same settings, but there's a couple of things you can notice here. One, it does perform better. There's definitely more performance here. We're going from 42 up to 58, so that's a pretty substantial jump. But there is a pretty interesting drop in the texture quality. This is one of the problems that I have when people just do bar charts on videos, just being like, well, this is the average number of frames that you get in this game on this chip, and this is the average number of frames you get in this game on this chip. Not realizing that things behave differently. And in this case, with Hogwarts Legacy, what you often get is you get detexturing when you run into some type of bottleneck with RAM, VRAM, or if you run into a bottleneck with load in, rather than the game getting horrible performance, what it will often do is detexturize the game. And you can see that here where the Lunar Lake, it just looks vastly better than what the AMD was. So AMD is getting better performance, but the game looks considerably worse on the same settings. Here's another scene, just jumping ahead a little bit here. And you can see it's basically the exact same situation where on the Lunar Lake system here, it just looks considerably better. We're getting about 40 FPS, which is very playable, incredibly playable, realistically in this game here. But then when we jump over to the Intel and over to the AMD machine, we're getting that strange kind of detexturing as well, where it turns into like a PlayStation 1 title. So just be aware that sometimes numbers to numbers don't really tell the whole story. So you get slightly better performance on AMD, but it just looks worse. And then we'll jump over here to a little bit of that Baldur's Gate. So same scene here, same location, 40 FPS in Baldur's Gate here on Lunar Lake. And then on the Ryzen AI, it's exactly the same, basically. So that's something that you need to take away here. And this is, this max watts here, so 65 watts. And it's a static. I moved around the camera, did all kinds of stuff, and the Lunar Lake is performing the same as the Ryzen AI. And this is the 890M, not the 880M. So just be aware that, in most cases, you're going to get really good performance on the Lunar Lake here, probably around a 780M iGPU. So, basically what AMD had as their best until the very peak, what they have right now. As good as the Ryzen AI 370, which has the 890M in here. Baldur's Gate, they are like for like. Lunar Lake is actually outperforming my 7840U iGPU easily, and it's basically matching the best that AMD has to offer right here. So overall, incredibly good performance. We're going to see when I do my follow-up video, how well this performs in many more games, but realistically you can see here that this is very impressive.
So what do I think about this laptop here? Not specifically the chip and all the different little components and that. What do I think about this laptop here? This laptop here, the Lenovo Yoga 7i Aura Edition from Lenovo with the brand new Lunar Lake chip in here, is an outstanding laptop. Let's go over the negatives and some of the considerations. The negative There's really only one real negative to this laptop. That is the storage. 2242 is dumb. You only have a 2242. This is a 15-inch laptop. It's not a 13-inch laptop. It's not a 14-inch laptop. I just finished a 14-inch Lenovo review with 2 NVMe's in it and SODIMM memory. There's no SODIMM memory in these laptops anymore. There's no soldered memory. It doesn't work that way anymore. You also somehow have slapped in there with a single 2242. It doesn't make sense. That 2242 needs to be a 2280. Period. Period. No exceptions, Lenovo. No exceptions. 2280, done. I don't want to be limited to 2 terabytes of storage. I need 4. This is a creator laptop. This is a creator laptop. This is a laptop for professionals. This is a laptop for graphic designers, people who need storage because their files are huge. You need to give us 2280. Figure it out. You can easily fit it in there. Move some stuff around. I don't find that acceptable at all. Luckily, you can fiddle with it and you can get things in there, but it's not like proper, right? It's not proper. You can get a 2280 in here, but you got to mess with it. It's kind of dumb. Realistically, you should have 2 in here. 2 NVMe's. The 14-inch laptop that I reviewed the other day from you guys had 2. So there's really no excuse there. So that's the negatives. 2242, dumb. No excuse. I give 0 excuses for that. That's a dumb thing, and I think it's a bad mistake from Lenovo. Does that break the laptop? No, not at all. This laptop is outstanding. CPU-wise, you have 2 options, 16 gigabytes of RAM, 32 gigabytes of RAM. Why are you talking about CPU? Well, because the RAM's on the CPU. It's on the package. Not in the CPU, but in the package, the chip package. So when you get the 16 gigabytes, you get the lower CPU. When you get the 32 gigabytes, you move that up automatically anymore. We're going to have to start rethinking these things nowadays, right? Things change over time. So we don't have that issue anymore. So I'd highly recommend you upgrade to the higher CPU, which automatically gets you 32 gigabytes of RAM. It's not a big price increase for a laptop. I mean, this laptop in general is like reasonably priced as it is. I don't know how they did it, but they did. So you're moving up to the 32 gigabytes and the better CPU. So just do it. Just do it. Otherwise, let's talk about some other stuff. Outstanding screen. It's not an OLED screen. I'm happy with that. They are bringing an OLED screen later on this laptop, at least according to the PSRF documents. We'll see if they actually do it, but they are potentially going to do it. This is a 10 out of 10 IPS screen, right? There gets to a point where, OLED, people always look at OLED and they're like, it's so much better than IPS screens. That's often because they use bad IPS screens, right? This is a glossy IPS screen, which will be similar to a glossy OLED. You'll get really vibrant colors as a result. It's also 100% DCI-P. A lot of OLEDs also are 100% DCI-P, so you're going to get the same color space. So there's no difference there. They're going to look exactly the same. The only difference is the contrast ratio. OLEDs have deeper blacks, obviously, infinite contrast realistically. This here, though, has outstanding blacks. They're not infinite because it's not OLED, but because it's a really, really high-end IPS panel and it's glossy, the blacks look truly outstanding. So you're going to overcome the negatives that are associated with an OLED, and yes, there are negatives with an OLED, by getting the IPS, and because this is a certain type of IPS, it overcomes the negatives of an IPS. So 10 out of 10 screen, straight up. High refresh rate and everything. Keyboard, it's the keyboard that I like. I like this keyboard. Sometimes they can make this same chassis with like this kind of smooth texture instead of this rubbery texture on their Yogas. It's personal preference. I don't really care. Whatever. It's fine. Both of them are great. Trackpad is gigantic and nice. Speakers are incredible on this laptop. I think it's the best Lenovo speakers I've ever used, including the Yoga 9i, the big one with the mini LED screen, which is a bigger laptop. These have better. These speakers are just something else. This is like, people look at the G16 from Asus and they're like, "It's the best speakers ever," which it kind of does in some ways. These are like the same. Like these speakers, when I first used them, I was like, wow. Great IOs on it, right? You get really, really nice IOs. It's not complicated. The actual form factor, it's super light considering it's all metal. It's an all metal laptop. So thin. It is so thin. Like when I was testing this thing last night, like playing games, benchmarking on my own before I started recording, then I was like, also like, I kind of like picked it up and I was like, man, this laptop is thin, right? And the fan is so quiet. I mean, part of it is that the Intel chip in here, I mean, it really does peak at like 30 watts for the whole thing, right? And that's including the RAM. The whole thing is like 30 watts, it's peaking. So it doesn't need to dump tons of watts into it. But then I also compared to my 7840U system, which is also about around the same amount of watts, kind of. And it's way louder. So this thing just sounds amazing. So, there's the only negative is the one single storage slot in there, and it's 2242. That's dumb. There's no excuse for that. Otherwise, this laptop is crazy good. Crazy good. The Lunar-like stuff is fantastic. I mean, it's the only laptop that I've tested so far, but really good battery life, overcoming any Intel that I've ever used, right? Maybe if you get like an Atom or something, but I mean, it's not even the same realm of existence. This thing has really good performance and really good battery life. Like, when they say all-day battery life, they mean it. iGPU performance is as good as I expected. It's around a 780M from AMD, which is their last gen, kind of. So AMD has their 880M and 890M. I've tested the 890M. That's right now the most powerful iGPU that there is, realistically. This is a little bit slower than that, maybe 20% below, which puts it around an 880M or 780M. What does that mean? ROG Ally, Legion Go, GPD Win, that level of performance, meaning very good. Very good performance. It's not going to perform quite as well as AMD's absolute peak, but this is huge upgrade for Intel. The Core Ultra stuff was good, but this is just great. Great. I use this next to my 780M. Technically, this was a little bit faster. It's close enough that it's like whatever. It's back and forth. It's outstanding. So that's that. It's a weird review for me because this is a truly new product and I really wanted to cover it and cover it properly. I will have a follow-up probably on the iGPU itself, and I'll bring in some other data as well so we can get a true iGPU comparison, talk about it as best I can. I didn't want to just do a generic review for this. I did my generic laptop review, but I didn't want to bundle too much into it in terms of like, all the performance and narratives and that, and just try to make this giant thing for YouTube. I want you guys to know what's going on here. So the chip itself is good. Okay, the chip itself is great. We'll get more on that in follow-up videos. I will do more on this chip because that's what I do. I'm one of the people who covers iGPUs a lot. It's something that I'm interested in. CPUs a lot, like the actual internals of the laptop. All that aside, though, the laptop itself is outstanding, truly outstanding, which I'm very happy for because, Lenovo makes good stuff. Generally speaking, they have some that are like whatever, but generally speaking, Lenovo's like pretty safe. You just buy their stuff and it's usually pretty good. Then it just comes down to price. But the Intel stuff, it's been up in the air. It's an outstanding chip in this laptop from Intel, and Lenovo created a really nice package, a unique package around that chip. So this is a complete product here. So should you buy it? Honestly, if all the things that I've talked about today are interesting to you, then yes, you should actually buy it. Legitimately, you should actually buy it because I don't really see any laptop that's going to beat this for me. Honestly, I can't see anything right now. I could get a Ryzen AI chip and get a little bit more iGPU performance, but I don't know, man. This laptop itself, like the actual laptop itself, is just so freaking compelling. Maybe if Lenovo makes the same laptop with a Ryzen AI, I can be a little bit more like maybe this, maybe that. But as it stands right now, this laptop is just outstanding. So that's the review. I'll put some links in the video description down below. Not through Lenovo affiliate, but affiliate through another company. If you use them, helps me out. I buy the stuff. I buy the vast majority of this stuff. Helps me out a lot and allows me to be objective as possible when I'm doing these reviews. This is a case where, I think objectively, this is a really freaking nice laptop. So check it out.